Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Garbaugust 2024. Garbaugust 3D, Criminali's event, where he makes us read the garbage that he loves so much. A reading course of action that I wholeheartedly approve. You should have a little garbage in your reading from time to time, especially if it's a lot of fun. I haven't exclusively encountered the fun kind of garbage in my reading for Garbaugust this year. I've had some reading that has thrown me into an ideological tizzy about what constitutes garbage and what doesn't, and what kind of garbage we're talking about. So I thought, for last night's reading, I would throw something on the pile that I doesn't provoke any ideological conundrums at all. Something where I know exactly what it is, where it is pure trash. I read Don Pendleton's The Executioner novels about the character Mac Bolan. Only I didn't read Executioner number 152 or 1052 or 2052. I read the first one, the very first in a new series, War Against the Mafia, which is this character, Mac Bolan, a hard-bitten Vietnam vet or a soldier, and also a sniper, an expert sniper. All sorts of heroic falderall pumped into the pages of this book about how heroic it is to be a sniper. Could not believe that, still can't believe it. I don't believe it when it happens when contemporary writers do it with their contemporary action hero being a sniper. I don't get that at all. I don't understand how you can attach even the slightest shred of heroism to the job of simply from an incredibly safe distance cold-bloodedly executing people who don't know you're there, don't have any chance to defend themselves, don't know what's going on, you don't know whether you're right or not, you're just the trigger of your boss. There's nothing heroic about it. It is the most cowardly thing, aside from drone-operated bombing, it's the most cowardly thing you can do in war. And yet it's sung in this book as the pinnacle of manly perfection. And so is Mac Bolan. He is just shy of being the kind of Jack Reacher figure who is superhuman, who can bleed all day, all week, and not need to go to the hospital, who can take 10 hot slugs in the chest or the stomach and shrug them off with the help of a beautiful woman, etc., etc. He's just shy of being superhuman. And this is his very first appearance. This is Don Pendleton not quite yet knowing, maybe, this is 1969, maybe not quite yet knowing the trash empire that he was launching with this book. He seems to take himself mighty seriously. This thing has epigraphs from Thomas Carlyle and Friedrich Nietzsche. And then at the bottom, as if to underscore how dumb this all is, you've got Mac Bolan himself, and his is all in caps, of course. And this is a story where Mac Bolan decides to put his tactical and strategic training to bear to eliminate the Mafia. Where actually we get many mission statements in this book, many, but this one will do. It takes place halfway through the book, but they're all over the book. There was nothing personal between Bolan and the enemy. No hatred, no score to settle. Life was just an overgrown game of cowboys and Indians. There were good guys and there were bad guys. The bad guys had to lose. It was as simple as that. The executioner had come to realize that he was fighting a holy war. Corny as it sounded. Good over evil. This was the issue. Which would they be, the cowboys or the Indians? Which is good and which is evil? I think I know what Don Pendleton would say. This was the cause, and Executioner Bolan knew that he would never find a better one to live for. How about feeding orphans? To live for, not to die for. There was no victory in dying. That was so clear to him. The victory lay only in the death of evil, and Mac Bolan found himself irreversibly committed to that undertaking. The Mafia was evil. The Mafia must die. This was the cause. Me Tarzan, you Jane. So I think Friedrich Nietzsche was probably sleeping when he epigraphed this one. It goes on like that all through the book. Mac Bolan is befriended in a kind of grudgingly admiring way by a couple of cops. One of those cops, Al Weatherby, is a detective. He's enormous. He's twice Bolan's size. I would love to have read a book about him. He's not all that happy about the mob in his town. I would have been happy to read a book about him written by somebody else, not written by this guy, not written by Don Pendleton, who can't put a normal sentence together to save his life. and who has, as you can tell from even that excerpt, all of what in Garbaugust we are referring to as the prejudices of the time. Don Pendleton has all of those in this book, and it's also dumb. The Mafia, they're really dumb. They're not worthy opponents for Mac Bolan, and that's a shame. That's lazy writing. They walk right into the trap he sets for them at the end of the book. It's even so convenient as to be in a little gully. The book is even dumb on the cover. Look at that. What is that? What are you expecting to do there? How are you expecting to save that woman? It's just a dumb cover. It's lazy, first of all. There's no background of any kind. It's just stock figures. But in 2 seconds, you can think of a way that would have been better for a novel called The Executioner. Keep in mind, 1969. This was before anybody had any idea that there were going to be 200 books to follow in this series. This, for all we knew, could have been a standalone book. Could have been a standalone modern classic like The Godfather. If you're going to do that, why not commission better cover art? The obvious choice being that this guy is looking at her, has the knife to her throat, and unbeknownst to him, behind him, this guy has the rifle pointed at the back of his head. Execution style. That would be a very dramatic cover, and it would at least make sense. This doesn't make any sense. But that's what happens all throughout the book. Mac Bolan just gets angrier and angrier. He says there's nothing personal in that excerpt, but this is plenty personal. He gets shot up some, and he's ministered back to health by a beautiful woman. That he has to remind her that even though he was shot in the shoulder and the gut and wherever, and he's lost a lot of blood, it hasn't affected his power. And we know what that means. He wasn't affected in the place of his power. But the whole time he is working for his grand scheme of revenge. Weatherby and another cop are reduced to spectators. They just watch. They know that he's guilty of murder. They know that he's guilty of murders earlier in the book. But they just watch as he sets the Mafia up, this local little cell of the Mafia. And then the big reveal at the end of the book is that he defeats them. I won't reveal how he does that, because that is, I guess, a spoiler for this thing. It's 50 years old, but it's not hard to predict, given his military background, how he does that. And then he is launched. The Weatherby and his colleagues are not going to arrest him. They might consider him a wanted man, but they kind of admire him, and he has taken out the Mafia in their neighborhood. He's made their lives and jobs a lot easier. And that just commences this series of books. And if I were taking this seriously, I could, of course, rail against it, because Mac Bolan thinks the Mafia is an evil that deserves to die because they operate outside the law. They conduct violence outside the law according to their own lights. When you don't get to do that, except that's what Mac Bolan does in this book and every other book. That's what he does. So it's what I mentioned yesterday. It's the pure, ingrained hypocrisy of these kinds of armed vigilante books. Whatever wish fulfillment they're providing has to have the grudging respect of the law. Has to. And that's true. That goes straight through 50 years to the modern day. That is true right up into the modern day. It's a good example. Well, an example that comes to mind is Sylvester Stallone, Tulsa King. You might not have seen the series. He's a disaffected mafia capo who is sent to Tulsa, Oklahoma, basically to rusticate him. He's not expected to do anything there. He's not going to be part of the families in New York or anywhere else. And he moves into town with his bespoke suits and his penchant for violence and decides to just take over the little local pot dispensary. Runs afoul of all kinds of shady power brokers who are also making a mint off the pot industry. But there's one scene in Tulsa King. I was waiting for it. When I was watching the show, I was waiting for it. What about Tulsa's law enforcement? Once they learn that this guy is in town, he has a rap sheet a mile wide. He's been in prison for 20 years for murder. Once they learn about this, aren't they going to want to talk to him? And sure enough, there's a scene in Tulsa King where two of Tulsa's finest pull him over, and there isn't even any subterfuge. He puts his hand inside his jacket. The two cops tell him, "Take your hand out of your jacket," and he tells them, "My hand is on a whatever make weapon that could put a hole through you big enough to run a train through. So all I want you to do is turn around, get in your car, and drive away." And they do. They do. The Tulsa Police Department has a budget of $6 or $7 million. They have 50 or 60,000 people that they can call on reserves. They have tanks, but you've got to have that scene. You've got to have the scene where the local law enforcement is completely stymied. Think about not so much Dave Morrell's book, but the movie Rambo, First Blood. Think about Rambo. Brian Dennehy's character, I think Al Weatherby in this book is basically the Brian Dennehy character. He's nonplussed about what to do. He needs to be essentially rescued by Colonel Troutman, telling him that I didn't come here to rescue him from you. I came here to rescue you from him. Only there's no tempering like that. There's no hint. I am not meaning to draw any comparison between this and First Blood. Not at all. For Rambo First Blood, David Morrow's first Rambo book is well written. It's a very good book. Deserves to be reprinted. It's not his fault that it was made into a brainless series of movies. There's no comparison here. This is pan shallow. And at the end, there aren't any leavening characters like that. Mac Bolan just loads up his car with ordnance and goes on his way to kill more people. Not to catch them in a crime, not to get irrefutable evidence against them and present it in a court of law, but just to kill them. He doesn't like them. So this, believe it or not, despite my tone, really set me on my feet. This was exactly the kind of trash I needed to read. So there you go. That is our Garbaugust for today. Nothing less than the Executioner #1, War Against the Mafia. I read an Executioner novel last Garbaugust, where the Executioner takes his war against the Mafia to Sicily. but here I'm going right back to the beginning. So maybe I'll stick with ratty old paperbacks for tonight as well. I don't know. I'll find out something. Or maybe it's been too long. Maybe I need to go back to poor, neglected Kindle Unlimited and see what they have to offer. I'll read some trash tonight, and I'll report on it to you tomorrow. So I'll wrap this up for now, and I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.